On October 18, China International Airlines flight CA-139 traveling from Hangzhou, Zhejiang to Seoul, South Korea was forced to make an emergency response mid-flight after a frightening incident. Passengers reported on social media that the overhead bin suddenly caught fire, accompanied by a loud explosion. One passenger described the scene, saying, "The fire shot out as flames and thick smoke quickly filled the cabin." The flight, originally scheduled to depart from Hangzhou Xiaoshan International Airport at 9:10 a.m. and arrive at Incheon International Airport in Seoul at 12:20 p.m., had been in the air for about an hour when the incident occurred. A passenger recalled hearing a sound resembling an explosion before flames appear above the overhead bin. In a video shared by passengers, thick smoke filled the cabin and flight attendants immediately rushed to the scene to put out the fire. Passengers appeared visibly frightened, with one believed to be Korean shouting, "Put out the fire quickly," in Korean. Following an initial investigation, China International Airlines confirmed that the fire was caused by a lithium battery in a passenger's carry-on luggage. Once the fire was extinguished, the cabin remained filled with smoke. Initially, the crew announced plans to return to Hangzhou Xiaoshan Airport, but later decided to make an emergency landing at Shanghai Pudong International Airport. China International Airlines later issued a statement on their official Weibo, confirming that no one was injured and that the crew had acted swiftly and handled the situation. To ensure safety, the airline arranged for another plane to continue the flight. The cause of the incident is still under investigation. Mr. Xu, a passenger on the flight, was interviewed by a reporter on October 18 afternoon. He described, "I was sitting near the rear of the plane and the flight had already covered almost half of the distance. At that moment, the flight attendants were serving snacks and bread in the cabin. Suddenly, I heard a loud bang and then I saw flames shooting out from the overhead bin towards the front of the cabin. The entire cabin was filled with smoke. The flight attendant responded quickly using water and fire extinguisher to put out the fire. Passengers also assisted by helping to extinguish the flames. After the fire was put out, that row overhead bin was completely blackened." Mr. Xu added that the flight was then diverted. "Around 11 a.m., we landed in Shanghai Pudong. Everyone was relieved. We got off the plane and waited for the airline to arrange another flight to continue our journey." A replacement plane arranged by China International Airlines took off at 3:03 p.m. and continued its journey, reaching its destination in South Korea at 5:30 p.m. local time. In recent years, incidents involving portable power banks, commonly referred to as P-bags in some regions, overheating or catching fire, have raised significant safety concerns over the use of mobile chargers. On August 28, Xiamen Airlines flight MF8086 traveling from Dalian to Nanjing was delayed when a power bank caught fire and emitted smoke before takeoff. A video shared by a passenger showed white smoke filling the cabin with several passengers standing up to look around. Some described the smoke as having an especially pungent odor. Xiamen Airlines confirmed the incident and said it was promptly handled, allowing the flight to depart as scheduled. The fire occurred before takeoff on the flight from Dalian to Nanjing. According to the travel app, the flight was originally scheduled to depart at 8:05 a.m. but took off at 10:16 a.m., with its actual arrival time being 11:41 a.m., confirming a delay. Since June, the Civil Aviation Administration of China has prohibited passengers from bringing power banks that lack the 3C certification, have unclear 3C labels, or belong to recalled models on domestic flights. The 3C certification, which stands for China Compulsory Certification, became mandatory for power banks starting August 1, 2023. After August 1, 2024, power banks without the 3C certification will no longer be sold. On July 16 at Wuhan Tianhe International Airport in Hubei, a male passenger was informed by security that he could not board with a power bank that lacked a 3C label. The passenger became agitated and during an argument with security threw the power bank to the ground, causing it to overheat and catch fire. Security personnel immediately evacuated the area, closed the passage, and moved the power bank into a fire bucket, using water to extinguish the flames. The passenger was later detained for 5 days. In March of this year, Hong Kong Airlines flight HX115 traveling from Hangzhou to Hong Kong was forced to make an emergency landing in Fuzhou after a fire broke out in the overhead bin. The fire was believed to have been caused by a power bank left in the compartment. The flight, originally scheduled to arrive in Hong Kong at 2:56 p.m. on March 20th, experienced smoke filling the cabin after white smoke started pouring from the overhead bin. Passengers recalled hearing what sounded like an explosion. One passenger described how a man opened the bin and found the power bank had caught fire. Despite the crew's swift response with fire extinguishers, the fire was not fully contained. Passengers and a flight attendant worked together to douse the flames with water and drinks. Footage from the scene showed severe damage to the overhead bin. One passenger recalling the incident on social media said, "It was unbelievable," and admitted, "I thought of all the worst-case scenarios." Another passenger shared their thoughts during the crisis. "In that critical moment, I thought about my elderly relatives who still need care and my children who haven't grown up yet. I wanted to leave them a few words, but there was no signal on my phone. It was hard to breathe. Hours passed and my chest still hurt. After landing, I had an EKG, which showed an abnormal heart rhythm. At the time, I felt hopeless, really hopeless. I told my husband, 'This is it,' and he said, 'It's okay.' But I could sense his panic. Thankfully, everything turned out fine, and I hope everyone stays safe in the future." Recent reports have highlighted a rise of incidents involving power banks overheating during flights in China. On the afternoon of June 13, Shanghai Airlines flight FM 9449 traveling from Zhoushan to Jieyang Chaoshan experienced an onboard incident when a passenger's power bank began emitting smoke, causing alarm among passengers. A passenger seated near the rear of the plane recalled that the incident occurred around 1:20 p.m. Just as the flight was preparing to land, a power bank carried by one of the passengers suddenly started smoking. The crew reacted immediately, working with passengers to douse the smoke using bottled water. An in-flight announcement reminded everyone to stay calm. The passenger said, "I helped carry several bottles of water from the rear to the cabin to assist with putting out the fire." On May 31st, China's Southern Airline flight CZ6850 traveling from Hangzhou to Shenzhen was forced to return shortly after takeoff when a passenger's camera battery and power bank began emitting smoke. The aircraft landed safely about 15 minutes later. Video footage shared online showed dense smoke filling the cabin, with some passengers standing to help flight attendants identify the source. On February 19th, Royal Air Philippines flight RW602 traveling from Boracay to Shanghai made an emergency landing in Hong Kong after a passenger's power bank caught fire mid-flight. Police and fire crews responded upon landing, and the plane was later confirmed to be undamaged. A year earlier, on August 13, an Eastern Airline flight MU6958 traveling from Lhasa to Shanghai was diverted to Wuhan after a passenger's power bank became lodged between seat cushions, overheated, and began emitting smoke. Data shows that China dominates global production of portable energy storage devices such as power banks and lithium batteries, accounting for about 90% of global output and shipments of power banks and around 80% of lithium battery components. However, concerns over product quality have persisted. On June 20th, Anker Innovations Technology, one of China's leading power bank manufacturers, announced a recall of more than 70,000 units across 7 models due to potential safety risks. The company said inspections revealed that a supplier had made unauthorized changes to materials used in certain batches of battery cells. These changes could lead to insulation failure after prolonged use, causing overheating or even combustion in rare cases. Headquartered in Changsha, Hunan, Anker specializes in mobile chargers and power banks. The company had previously launched a large recall in the United States. According to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, Anker's PowerCore 10,000 power bank was recalled on June 12 due to potential lithium-ion battery hazards. A total of 1.2 million units were affected, with 19 reported cases of fires or explosions that caused injuries and property damage. Around the same time, Shenzhen Romos Technology also issued a recall on June 16 involving 3 power bank models totaling more than 490,000 units. Romos stated that the recall was due to material defects in certain battery cells, which could cause overheating and, in extreme cases, lead to fires. The large-scale recalls have exposed widespread supply chain vulnerabilities in China's power bank industry. According to reports from Chinese media, these recalls are not limited to a single brand, but reflect systemic issues across the supply chain. Multiple sources have identified Amprius Technologies Wuxi as a key supplier of defective battery cells used by several major power bank brands. Battery cells are a critical component of portable chargers, and most manufacturers depend heavily on specialized suppliers. Data from China's Certification and Accreditation Information Public Service Platform shows that all 3C certification licenses for Amperex battery cells were either suspended or revoked, mostly in June. This means the affected battery models can no longer be supplied or used. The supply chain disruption has affected several well-known brands. In addition to Anker and Romos, companies such as Ugreen and Baseus have also had their 3C certification suspended or revoked. For example, Anker's Record A1680 model had its 3C certification revoked on March 28 this year. Two Romos models had their certification placed under suspended status on April 29. Ugreen and Baseus experienced similar certification issues between late March and late April. Beyond the aviation industry, concerns over power bank safety have also reached campuses. According to reports from Yangtze Evening Post and other outlets, several universities in Beijing recently issued notices instructing students to stop using Romos power banks. Students at several Beijing universities shared online that campus security officers had distributed urgent notices stating, following warnings from higher authorities, it has been found that the 20,000 mAh Romos power banks is most likely to explode during charging than other brands or models. If you own one, please stop using it immediately to prevent any safety risks. A staff member from Beijing Union University Students' Affairs Office confirmed that there had indeed been an incident on campus involving a Romos power bank that caught fire. The staff member said this model has a relatively high risk of spontaneous ignition. Communication University of China also reported a similar case involving the same brand and model. Starting June 28, China's Civil Aviation Administration began enforcing a new regulation requiring strict inspection of the 3C certification label on power banks carried on domestic flights. Passengers with uncertified, mislabeled, or recalled power banks are now prohibited from boarding. However, reports have surfaced that large quantities of these confiscated or abandoned power banks are being resold on second-hand markets such as Xianyu. This has sparked widespread concern. Searches on Chinese second-hand trading platforms like Xianyu, Zhuanzhuan, and Pinduoduo using the keyword used power bank show that many sellers are offering power banks without official 3C certification. Some even advertise them as airport confiscated goods in their product descriptions. According to Chinese media reports, a flood of power banks labeled as airport seized has appeared on second-hand platforms selling for as little as 15 to 30 yuan, about $2 to $4. When asked about product safety and sources, some sellers brushed off concerns, saying the devices were safe for normal use or recycled through proper channels, while others refused to provide details. A reporter contacted a seller based in Bao'an District, Shenzhen, and arranged an in-person pickup. The investigation found that the power banks being sold bore airport-related markings. Some were lost items, while others had been confiscated recently for lacking 3C certification. Another seller from Tangsha town in Dongguan, Guangdong province, also claimed that all of his products were airport stock, boasting, even if you need 5,000 units, I can supply them, indicating a steady and abundant supply. Further investigation revealed that these confiscated non-compliant power banks were not destroyed as expected, but instead resold through airport recycling contractors. When reporters posed as wholesale buyers and contacted two companies involved in airport power bank recycling, they found that these firms bought the devices cheaply from airports under the pretext of recycling and dismantling, then sold them off for profit. Recycling operators said that 1 ton of power banks from airports currently sell for about 9,000 yuan, roughly 4,000 units per ton. After adding transportation costs, the average cost per unit is around 2 to 3 yuan. When resold on the second-hand market, each ton can generate a profit of 8,000 to 12,000 yuan. In comparison, sending the items for destruction would yield only around 4,000 yuan. One dealer said the profit difference is double. A business manager at a recycling company in Dongguan admitted the goods were collected from airports still looked almost new. These 12 bags came from Yunnan. We already sold off the better ones. These remaining ones are the older stock. Reports indicate that demand for these unqualified power banks is surging in the market. Sellers said that with the start of the new school term approaching, students have become their main customers, and many are already stockpiling inventory. Reporters noted that sellers appeared confident about supply, with one saying, "We're never short on stock." Comments on social media express outrage, with users saying, "Unbelievable, they confiscate people's belongings, claim they'll dispose of them, and then resell them online. They might as well return them to passengers." Another comment read, "I live near Pudong Airport. I've seen an elderly woman selling knives and scissors, saying they were seized by customs." Analysts noted that China's domestic flight regulations are extremely strict. Power banks must have clear 3C certification, a rated capacity under 100 Wh, and must be carried on board rather than placed in checked baggage or overhead compartments. These strict measures, they said, reflect authorities' awareness of reliability issues with domestically made products. But the rules for international flights are far looser. A patent analyst described as reminiscent of earlier government negligence. Some even compared it to how the Chinese government initially handled the COVID-19 outbreak in Wuhan, allowing it to spread globally. Fortunately, many airlines worldwide have introduced similar restrictions on Chinese-made power banks. Hong Kong's Civil Aviation Department announced that starting April 7th this year, passengers will be prohibited from using external power banks to charge other devices, charging the power banks themselves, or storing them in overhead compartments during flights. Japan's Civil Aviation Bureau under the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure, Transport, and Tourism followed suit. Starting July 8th, passengers flying with Japanese airlines such as ANA and JAL will be prohibited from placing power banks in checked luggage or overhead compartments. Instead, they must keep them with them at all times to monitor battery conditions. A reporter who flew between Hong Kong and Japan 3 times described 2 instances of being assigned seats with no storage space under the seat. One in an emergency exit row and another in the front row of economy class. In both cases, flight attendants instructed that the carry-on baggage be placed in the overhead bin, but the power bank had to be removed and kept in the passenger's pocket throughout the flight. In other words, going forward, power banks will quite literally live up to their nicknames, P-bags, as passengers will have to carry these mostly China-made devices with them at all times during flights.